Welcome to this program in the Our Finger Lakes History series. I am Seneca County historian Walter Gable. The topic of today's program is cobblestone buildings. As you see in this picture, it is so special in architectural style that it comprises its own special category on the National Register of Historic Sites. That is because it is both a unique architectural style and that it is an architectural style that is concentrated in the greater Rochester area of upstate New York. The map shows the concentration of cobblestone buildings in the immediate Rochester area. Of course, Rochester is located in Monroe County. You will note that the counties with the greatest number of cobblestone buildings are Wayne, Monroe, Ontario, and Orleans. The term cobblestone itself needs explanation. Geologists classify stones by their size. A pebble is a stone that can be held by 2 fingers. A cobblestone is a stone that can be held by 1 hand. A boulder needs to have 2 hands to hold it. So cobblestones are stones that are approximately 2.5 inches to just over 10 inches in size. The word cobblestone itself comes from the Middle English, with cob meaning rounded lump and stone meaning a small rock. In this picture, the largest cobblestone would probably be used as an anchor stone to help make for greater strength in the wall. In our area of upstate New York, cobblestones can be differentiated as to being field stones or lake-washed stones. The field stones are angular or rough stones gathered from the glacial till as the glaciers were retreating about 12,000 years ago. The lake-washed cobblestones have been rounded smooth by the waves action on Lake Ontario, for example. This slide shows the main architectural features of any building. There are certain features that we want to pay careful attention to in this cobblestone program, so I suggest you look specifically at certain features. The quoins at the corners, the gable near the peak of the roof, and the water table. The cobblestones that you see on the exterior of the typical cobblestone building is actually a veneer label of cobblestones that has been added to a rougher rubble wall. The bulk of the typically foot-wide wall of a cobblestone building consists of a combination of boulders and mortar, making up what is called the rubble section of the wall. In other words, the finest looking cobblestones were used for the outside or exterior of the wall. Now, these cobblestones could be small, roundish stones like what you see at the left, or they could be slanted in a herringbone pattern as you see at the right. Now, both of these that are shown here are probably lake-washed cobbles, as they appear to be quite smooth. Here you see a typical field cobblestones wall. Note how the stones are not lake-washed smooth, and they are not uniform in size and shape. Quoins were used at the corners of cobblestone buildings to add structural strength. The quoin might be nicely chiseled limestone blocks, as you see here. In this picture, note how there are 4 courses of cobblestones to each quoin. The number of courses was influenced by the size of the cobblestones being used in each course. Here you see another example of quoins and the number of cobblestone courses per quoin. In this case, there are 6 courses of cobblestones per coin because smaller cobblestones are being used. At the lower left, you'll see a close-up of the image. This is just a little title frame for the next several slides in which I'm going to show many examples of cobblestone buildings in upstate New York. This house was built in 1841, as you can see on the date stone above the front door. The wall facing the road sports oval field cobbles in a herringbone pattern, about 3/4 of the way up. Then it continues the rest of the way up with standard cobblestone course and then a herringbone course at the very cornice line. Note how the quoins, the water table, the lintels above the windows, and the window sills have been painted white, although they are stone. The Federalist influence of balance and symmetry is clearly here. Note how the door is centered with 2 windows on each side of the wall facing the road. Note also that the basement wall consists of cobblestones. Here's an example of a Gothic revival house built of small, dark, red sandstone, lake-washed cobbles from the Sodus Bay area, and that they were laid diagonally. There are 6 rows or courses of cobblestones per quoin on the front side of the house. The limestone quoins have hammered centers and tooled edges. There's also a limestone water table, but it's hard to see it in this picture. Nearby the previous house is the beautiful Swift House and Barns, sometimes referred to as the Stone Acre Farms. The house was built in the early 1840s. The house and the barns were built of large glacial field cobbles. In the mid-20th century, Henry Gleason of Gleason Works in Rochester spent lots of money restoring the house and the barns. And in this next picture, you see the cobblestone barns on the property. Historians who are experts in cobblestone buildings like to divide the years in which they are widely constructed into 3 different time periods, each with their typical own characteristics, but we'll not spend any more time on that particular topic. Now, cobblestone buildings come in different colors. In the middle picture, you see an example of small red cobblestones being used. In the bottom pictures, you see alternating courses, several small red courses, and then 1 or more courses of white cobblestones. In this example, note the use of small red cobblestones in the house at the very top. Then note the use of larger-sized cobblestones for the 2 structures shown at the bottom. In this picture, you can easily recognize that these cobblestones are much rougher in appearance on the left wall than those on the wall to the right. Notice here how rough in appearance the quoins are in the structure. Note also that the cobblestones for this house tend to be long and flat or thin for each course. Cobblestone houses can take on different patterns. The one at the top left consists of so many courses of one type or size of cobblestone, but then a course that tends to stand out. In the house at the bottom, it appears that the cobblestones of the wall to the left of the corner quoin are a little smaller than those on the wall to the right. Here is a classic example of a herringbone pattern for courses of a cobblestone house. Note the slant to each course of stones. Now, when we're talking about cobblestone buildings, they're more than just simply houses. Here's a former blacksmith shop in Alloway, and it is an octagon. Here are two examples of cobblestone smokehouses. Obviously, it was wise to make your smokehouse of stone or brick. In Fishers, we have this railroad pump house built of cobblestones. If you go to the Meridian Cemetery, you will see clearly the Kendall family gravestone that is made of cobblestones. There currently is a fundraising drive to get sufficient funds to restore this deteriorating gravestone. Now for some examples of cobblestone barns. Of schoolhouses made of cobblestones. Of churches. Some of these churches are still in use, and that's not surprising. It tends to be true that the cobblestone buildings, by the nature of the way in which they were constructed, laying a few courses and letting the mortar dry before doing any more, allowed the buildings to settle well, and therefore they have not cracked and deteriorated extensively over the years. Now, cobblestone buildings also have quoins of different types. The house at the upper left has quoins of one stone type only, in contrast to the quoins of the house shown in the middle, which alternates as to the type of stone quoins. The small building at bottom right is unusual in that it has brick quoins. The quoins at the building at the top left have been cemented over. At top right, the quoins on the building have been covered over so as to look like wooden pillars. Bottom left, the quoins are still in the natural color of the stone. Bottom right, the quoins have been covered over to look like massive stone support pillars. This cobblestone building doesn't even have quoins at the corners. That probably helps to explain why it isn't a very large multi-story building. Another way in which cobblestone buildings differ is to the nature of the gable, the end that has the peak of the roof. Note the differences in appearance of the gables on these cobblestone buildings, especially in terms of the frieze and cornice and the windows, be it one or more than one windows in the gable. If you look there, you clearly see the unevenness of those courses. The bottom picture shows the street side of the building, so most people driving by do not notice the uneven courses of the west wall. Go across the street from this house and you see this one. It is reported that the apprentice masons who were learning on the job at the house you just saw previously, they were learning and they had apparently learned enough that when they do the courses of this house, the courses are nice and even. Although most cobblestone buildings are within a 90-mile radius of Rochester, here is a hexagonal cobblestone house in Madison, New York, near Utica. This old cobblestone tavern structure is in Bulkville, just a few miles away from Madison, New York. I also love, if you look at the lower right, how the building appears to curve around a corner. Nearby is this cobblestone structure that was apparently built in 1844. In the close-up at the bottom left, you can see the large size of the cobblestones and their varied and rough nature. Now for some examples of cobblestone buildings in Seneca County. This is the first one. This house was built by Hiram Lay. The square cupola on the house was actually on a nearby cobblestone barn, but the barn was torn down to make way for the Montezuma National Wildlife Refuge. So the cupola was saved from the barn and placed on the house. The house has a very interesting Victorian porch, adding a nice touch to the building. Here you see other views of the same house. Note the distinctive quoins. Also note that the larger sized cobbles are being used. This house is a classic Federal style house. Note the symmetry of 2 windows on each side of the front entrance door, and then 5 windows spaced immediately above each window on the first floor. This is an example of a former Methodist Episcopal Church building that today is a private residence. Perhaps one of the more beautiful cobblestone buildings in all of Seneca County is this so-called Holmes House. It was built in Federal style using cobbles from nearby fields, in other words, field cobbles. The lintels over the windows are 10.5 inches thick, and the window sills are 4.5 inches thick. In this close-up, you can see clearly that there are 4 courses of cobbles per quoin. You can also see that these are not lake-washed, smooth cobbles. They are field cobbles. Another very beautiful cobblestone house of Seneca County is the Carmen House that was built in the Greek Revival style in the 1840s or 1850s. It is one of the largest cobblestone houses in Seneca County. These additional pictures give you other views of the same house. Note the additions onto the west side of the house. The classical columns of the main part of the house are set on squares, painted in distinctive green color. One of the more interesting houses in terms of history of cobblestone houses is this house. It also shows clearly how a cobblestone house can very easily undergo change over several decades. The original cobblestone house was probably 1.5 stories tall, but it was enlarged by literally raising the roof to add wooden stories to it. The wooden portions reflect many qualities of later building styles than those used in the original cobblestone construction. For many years, the ballroom, as it was known, on the very top attic floor, was a gathering place for entertaining local farm families. This is a picture of the house as it looked about 1900. Lawson Pontius wrote a poem about visiting his grandparents' house when he was just a lad, but I won't take the time here to share the poem. Now, this is the first example of 2 houses built by Julius Bull. This house was built about 1830, and it's on Lower Lake Road in Seneca Falls. And the house was allegedly a station on the Underground Railroad, as indicated by the historic marker. It was located very near the western shore terminus of the ferry that crossed Cayuga Lake. Julius Bull also built this cobblestone house in the town of Varick. Because it looks so similar in design to the one he had built on Lower Lake Road in Seneca Falls, he probably hired the same mason to build both of them. Now, if you want to learn more about cobblestone buildings, there is a wonderful book called Cobblestone Quest. In it, Rich and June Freeman have put together several different driving tours with wonderful directions and information about the houses on each tour. The driving tours are easy to follow, and you are rewarded with seeing close up so many fine examples of cobblestone architecture. You can also learn a great deal more about cobblestone buildings by going to visit the Cobblestone Society Museum in Childs, New York, near Albion. You can go inside a cobblestone country schoolhouse that has been preserved. Now, are you becoming a fan like I am as I drive by cobblestone buildings? I have to stop and consider a few questions. How big are the cobblestones? What color are the cobblestones? Is there a herringbone pattern or no pattern? How many courses of cobblestones are there per coin? What are the nature of the coins? What do they look like? Are they painted? How much, if at all, has the cobblestone building changed over time? I hope you've learned some things about cobblestone buildings, and I hope that whenever you drive by a cobblestone house, you'll be more careful to think about some of those questions. Cobblestone buildings are rather unique to the greater Rochester area. We are fortunate that they were so well constructed that many of them remain in full use today. Their story is another chapter in our Finger Lakes history.